Hey there, thanks for clicking on this video. You can call me Keg, and this is Opinions Not Facts. This is something I do where I take a topic that's really on my mind and I just rant. And today I do have kind of an interesting rant for you guys because it's about my teaching job and how I got chewed out by the PE teachers. Now for a bit of lore, I was a middle school art teacher. I actually quit my job this year, and this was not the reason I quit. It was one of maybe a few reasons I decided to walk away, but it certainly made me glad that I did choose to leave the school district. This all happened maybe a couple weeks ago now, so I have had some time to decompress. I'm not screaming mad about it anymore, but at the time this really irked me and rubbed me the wrong way. And it's because I got yelled at and chewed out by a gym teacher and then complained to my bosses, the admin, about it. So I'm going to tell you guys the story of this, and hopefully you sympathize with me on the misery of being bullied by PE teachers. So for context, our school was not doing well at this point in the year when this happened. We were at the end of May, early June. Kids were completely done. They were checked out since April. They were losing their minds. Our ISS was so full sometimes, that's in-school suspension, that they did not have room for more kids. They had to turn kids away who had been deemed like not able to sit in a classroom without disrupting learning. But we literally had no more places to put them. We had to send them back to the classroom. Like, that's how bad it was. I was talking to the guy who runs ISS, and he was saying that like for lunch detentions, he could not pack another student into the room. It was crazy. Kids were behaving horribly. Everyone was stretched thin and exhausted and tired. Parents were being really tough on a lot of the teachers because, you know, they don't check their kids' grade all year, but then it hits May and suddenly they freak out because their child is failing. And you're like, we emailed you and called you 85 times. Why do you care now when it's too late? So just a mess all around. So all the teachers were really stressed. And I think this situation happened because of the stress. Like, we were all just trying to survive and everyone was at wit's end. But still, I mean, one of the reasons I decided to quit teaching was because I hated how by the end of the year, every teacher was so burnt out and stressed that they could not give each other the benefit of the doubt. And to be fair, I'll tell you guys how this was proved to me at the end that some teachers still can, and it's not all bad. But between me and this set of gym teachers, I don't know what was wrong, but it was just a mess. So we have these outdoor spaces that are set up for gym classes. They're fields, they're like courts, things like that, set up for gym classes. There's also patches of areas outside that aren't so much. They're more like patches of grass or like a hill or like a little area of sidewalk and stuff, you know, like a front entrance area. They're not normal for people to be doing gym classes out there. Now, my first year when I started taking students outside, nobody had really explained stuff to me, so I was sort of, honestly, I'll confess, I was probably annoying to the gym classes because I would take my kids outside and let them run on the field, and then the gym class would come out and be like, hey, we need the field. I learned very quickly with that. I learned to keep my kids away from the gym areas, where we could go, where was out of the way, all those different things. When nobody just directly tells you, you step on a lot of toes, and that's what happened to me. So honestly, some of this too might be the buildup of being new and having stepped on some toes the first year or two. But genuinely, I was learning, I was trying to do right by the gym teachers. So this summer, there was just a notice reminder that went out generally, just an admin thing that they did reminding all the teachers, like, hey, if you're taking your kids outside, just remember, respect the gym classes. These are their areas, you know, they get dibs. And to my understanding, that meant like, hey, don't just go on the court and start playing on the courts. That's where gym places are. You know, don't let your kids go mess with the equipment, keep them together. And so I was doing that. I might take my kids for a walk if they needed a brain break, but I would always tell them, you know, we stay out of the gym stuff. If we have to walk by gym students, you don't run up and go grab the gym students. You don't take their sports equipment. And my kids were listening. They were doing really well despite being at the end of their rope and ready for summer. Now, my 6th graders were completely at the end of their capabilities, and so I was taking them outside a lot towards the end of this year, just because they needed to run off that energy, and we were kind of out of things that I could teach them without them completely destroying the room. So I figured, well, we'll just go outside, get their energy out, I'll be like a second gym class, that's okay. I only see them every other day, so it was like 3 days left for their year, as opposed to having like 2 weeks left or whatever. So it wasn't so much of a loss for them. Now, we were at the front entrance. We were kind of on a grassy area right next to the entrance to the school, and this is not a gym area. This is just sort of a general walkway path. A lot of students will just come out with their classes and they'll hang out there in the sun and do their schoolwork. We go out there a lot, and I'll have my students do observational drawing. There's a little bit of a hill, so you can see out over the area quite nicely, and it's good for them to practice. So this has been a common place that I go out to. And I even emailed the admin and said, hey, I will be taking my students out to this hill. Please let me know if there's any issues. They didn't reply, so I took my students out. Now, I was kind of up by the hill. I had some students who were down on the walkways below, not in gym areas still, but throwing around a ball down there that they had brought. I had told them, stay within my eyesight. If I can't see you, that's a problem, and keep your distance from gym classes. Now, at the time, there were no gym classes out. There were some like cones scattered around, but I didn't see any near us, so I figured we were okay. And I just sort of stood and looked over my students, kept an eye on them, made sure they were not getting into trouble, and all seemed fine. Suddenly, students started appearing up on the hill, and I couldn't see any teacher with them, but they were just sort of wandering up there. And I just assumed it was another class taking a walk, because a lot of times, again, the non-gym classes, the more academic classes and specials like art, will kind of take their kids on a walk, get some energy out, and then the kids will sort of congregate on this hill next to the main entrance. That's just what I assumed. However, the next thing I knew, there was a gym teacher screaming at me. Well, I know screaming seems really excessive. Yelling at me and my students about how we were in the way, get out of here, like this isn't your place. They even were yelling about how I don't come into your class and throw things around, get out of my classroom, like throwing a huge temper tantrum about it. It was super uncomfortable, and so I pulled my kids over and I said, okay, we'll just stay on the patio pavement here. Like, we're out of the way. They're using that grass area, I guess. We'll just stay out of the way. My kid took 1 foot off of the patio and onto the grass near the hill, and it happened all over again. More yelling, more get your kids out of here, like just complete what I would call an adult meltdown, like completely uncalled for, super rude to the kids, super rude to me. And I just grabbed my kids and I went inside, and they were in shock. They were really upset. They felt like they were being accused of things that they hadn't done. I was admittedly emotional. I teared up at this because I was just humiliated, like to be yelled at in front of my students, to have my students treated that way, and for them to feel genuinely disrespected and like have their actions misconstrued so aggressively was hard for them. So I just took them upstairs and we just kind of quietly went back to the room, and they just sort of sat there and did some drawings and like doodles things. And I tried to make it fun, but genuinely we were all so upset that it just ruined the day. So I guess what happened is they were doing like some sort of like, I don't know, scavenger hunt or something, and they wanted to use the top of the hill, and my students being at the bottom of the hill was too close and too much of a problem. And so the next day I took another group outside, and I decided, so that we would not be in the way, I would go to the opposite side of the school. So I took my students all the way to the opposite side of the school, away from the gym teachers, so we would not be a problem. And lo and behold, apparently we were a problem, because I found gym equipment stashed in a trash can. And there were several gym teachers out, but my students did not know any of the other gym teachers besides the one who had yelled at us yesterday. And so I said, if that's the one you know, I'm going to send 2 of you to go bring this to that gym teacher, because I don't want them wandering around looking for a gym teacher they can't find. So I took 2 of my boys who needed to run off some energy, and I said, I want you to run this over to that gym teacher, and I want you to tell her we found it stashed in a trash can. Ask her if she knows if it's supposed to be there. We will put it back in the trash can if it's not, but we want them to have their equipment if some kid just did a stash and dash. And they went in and they like sent this super passive aggressive email to me and admin about how like, please see this email admin sent about your like unsupervised students wandering around outside multiple times, like this huge thing. And this was super frustrating to me because the first time I was literally standing there. You berated me in front of my students. They were not unsupervised. That was clearly a misunderstanding of what spaces you were trying to use. That was an accident. The second time was me trying to be a supportive and helpful neighbor when I thought students were destroying your gym equipment. To some extent, I get where they're coming from, but I was so frustrated that I was genuinely like trying to respect them, trying to be a good neighbor, and instead of getting the benefit of the doubt or being realistic about how sometimes there's variables when you're working with students, it was just like a total meltdown of our relationship. They just went nuclear. They didn't talk to me personally. They immediately like got admin involved after yelling at me. So if anyone should have gotten admin involved, it should have been me coming to the admin and saying I just got berated and humiliated in front of my students by a gym teacher. But I was just going to let it go and move on, and I took steps to try and accommodate these gym teachers the way they wanted, and it just did not work out. And I ended up talking to some friends. There's some music teachers who I would eat lunch with, and apparently the gym teachers were being really nasty to them as well. There were some really mean and nasty emails sent when one of the choir teachers or band teachers or someone said, hey, if a student is not busy in your class, they can come to my thing. And apparently the student was like, oh yeah, they need me. They have to have me. And the gym teacher just blew up at this music teacher about you're stealing my students and da 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 da, and you know, didn't even take a moment to consider that students might not necessarily be representing their teacher the best. I've had students who literally like I wrote out if needed or like if possible, if you don't mind, send student to art room for such and such a thing, and they have erased and rewritten it to say student must come to art room. So like we know that the students are not always the most honest or present teachers the way they should be. And usually I give so much grace. I will literally call teachers and say, hey, did little Sally repeat this to me correctly? Are you okay if they come to your room? And you know, I trust teachers over students. So the fact that that gym teacher was just immediately nasty to the music teacher, not really reasonable behavior in a school district, in a middle school. So overall, I just felt very frustrated and disappointed by the lack of faith presented in other teachers by the gym teachers. And I get it, they were probably sick and tired of it happening. Maybe there were other teachers who were not letting their students do or not supervising their students the way they should have, and I was the last straw. But to get the brunt of that was just awful. I genuinely was angry and scared to come in just because I didn't want to deal with all this negativity while I was so stressed about students, and it really affected how I left. Honestly, it made me happier to leave, but I still feel really sad because my memories working at that middle school are forever tainted by this horrible last taste of what it meant to be a teacher at that school. So that's my little rant. That's my frustration, how I got yelled at by gym teachers. And ladies and gentlemen, the feud between arts and physical education are alive and well, and the gym teachers are keeping it that way. So I hope you enjoy my story, and if you're going to be a teacher, be careful of other teachers. They can be mean sometimes too. All right, well, that's kind of a sad note, but I'll leave you to it. Happy summer, you guys.